Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the final Assets Project Strategy Committee meeting of this year. Could I ask everyone to note the fire safety instruction that on hearing the alarm you should leave the chamber via the double doors at the rear, exit the building through the main entrance and congregate in the car park. Also please switch off your mobile phone and turn any other electronic devices being used to silent. I would like to remind everyone present this meeting is subject to an internet webcast recording where the proceedings are capable of repeated viewing. If you are seated in the public area of the council chamber, it's likely that your image will be captured by the recording cameras and result in your image becoming part of the broadcast. This may infringe your human rights, and if you wish to avoid this, you should leave the public seating area in the main body of the council chamber and move to the upper public gallery. Members, that if for any reason you're not present for the whole of the debate on an item, you will not be allowed to vote on that item. Item 1, apologies for absence. Miss White, are there any apologies?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies have been received from Councillors Chinnery, Kendall and Lewis. Councillors Barber, Mayor and Aspinall are substituting this evening.
Thank you, Miss White. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations to be made? No, thank you. Item 3 is the minutes of the previous Assets, Projects and Strategy Committee meeting on the 25th of February 2026. The minutes begin on page 3 of the supplementary agenda and the action sheet is on page 5 of the main agenda. Is it agreed that I sign as a correct record the minutes of the Assets, Projects and Strategy Committee meeting held on the 25th of February 2026, which begin on page 3 of the supplementary agenda? Thank you. Item 4 is the Chair's update. The report begins on page 7 of the agenda. Are there any questions from the committee? No, fantastic. Item 5 is Brentwood Borough Council's response to proposed reforms to the National Planning Policy Framework, NPPF, and other changes to the planning system. The report begins on page 11 of the agenda. Mr. Quilter, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Chair. So this report presents Brentwood Borough Council's proposed response to the government's consultation on the draft National Planning Policy Framework and associated reforms. The consultation opened on the 16th of December last year and closed yesterday. An officer-level response was submitted, and following your consideration this evening, a member-endorsed version can be submitted. The draft NPPF represents one of the most substantial restructurings of national planning policy since 2012 when it was introduced. It clearly distinguishes between plan-making and decision-making policies, meaning that local policies conflicting with national decision-making policies will carry very limited weight. The proposals will directly shape Brentwood's ongoing local plan review, which must now be prepared fully under the new plan-making system. While the Council supports the ambition to streamline plan-making, reduce duplication and clarify national policy, several proposals represent significant challenges for Brentwood's specific context. A key concern is the deliverability of the 30-month local plan timetable. This timetable assumes the availability of national tools, templates and regulations that have not yet been published, all of which are essential to prepare a local plan under the new system. It also assumes that spatial development strategies will resolve cross-boundary matters such as housing distribution and transport, but the Greater Essex STS will not be available in time to inform Brentwood's plan, creating uncertainty for evidence preparation and alignment. Council has also raised concerns regarding policy PM61C, which prohibits local plans from repeating or modifying national decision-making policies. Brentwood emphasises that greater flexibility is needed to reflect local circumstances, particularly for design quality, climate mitigation and adaptation, infrastructure capacity and greenbelt matters, which frequent national policy changes since the adoption of our 2022 local plan, retaining some ability for reasonable local interpretation is essential. Turning to the Greenbelt, the treatment of the Grey Belt is one of the most significant concerns for Brentwood. To clarify its status, Greenbelt was first introduced in the December 2024 NPPF and further refined in February 2025 in the Planning Practice Guidance. It is not new in the current consultation. Instead, the 2025 draft NPPF refines and strengthens how Grey Belt is to be assessed. In practical terms, Grey Belt allows lower performing Greenbelt land to be considered for development, subject to national tests. However, the broadened definition proposed through the consultation risks enabling development on land in Brentwood that, while not previously developed, is nonetheless highly valued for its openness, landscape quality, biodiversity or agricultural function. Proposals that direct increased development to areas around stations, even within the Greenbelt, raise additional concerns about speculative pressure and the erosion of strategic gaps between settlements. Housing policy reforms also carry substantial implications. Brentwood considers the standard method insufficiently responsive to our constraints, given the infrastructure limitations and extensive Greenbelt coverage. Proposed minimum density requirements around stations could conflict with local character, heritage sensitivities and landscape considerations, particularly without a clear national definition of reasonable walking distance or what constitutes a well-connected station. Transport-related reforms amplify these concerns. Brentwood already faces significant pressures along the A12, A127 and key junctions, along the M25. The continued absence of a national definition of what constitutes a severe highways impact creates uncertainty in decision-making, and delays to major regional transport projects make it harder to plan for sustainable growth or achieve modal shift. Climate-related policies also present challenges. Policy PM13 would limit local authorities' ability to set more ambitious sustainability and carbon reduction standards than national building regulations. Brentwood consider this a missed opportunity, particularly given our Essex-wide commitments to long-term climate goals. In summary, while the Council welcomes national efforts to simplify and standardise plan making, we emphasise the need for greater clarity, realistic expectations and flexibility, particularly for a borough that is highly constrained, predominantly greenbelt, and dependent on infrastructure improvements beyond our direct control. The recommendation this evening is that the committee approves the draft response in Appendix A as the Council's member-endorsed submission. That concludes my introduction. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Quilter. I will now move the recommendation set out on page 12 of the agenda. Do I have a second?
Happy to second that.
Thank you. Would anyone like to speak or have any questions for Mr. Quilter on this item? No? Fantastic. Seconder, would like to say anything? No. In that case, we will now vote on the recommendations on page 12 of the agenda. All those in favour? Thank you very much. The motion is carried. I just want to express again my thanks to Mr. Quilter and the planning team in responding to the 255 questions, which is a nice short consultation for our team to deal with, and in turn the Local Development Plan Working Group who fed back various input into this throughout the process as well, so thank you to those members also. Item 6 is the Compliance Dashboard Quarterly Update. The report begins on page 9 of the supplementary agenda. Mr. Anderson, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Chair. Just to update members, so before members is the quarterly update for compliance on the corporate estate. Just 2 points to highlight. Firstly, with electrical safety, fixed wire tests, just for a point of clarification for members, it states that we have a property that has gone from having a satisfactory test to an unsatisfactory test following the latest testing. Just as I say, to clarify to members, so with a fixed wire test, we test a third of the circuits of a building each time we do a test. So it's not uncommon for a site to go from being satisfactory to unsatisfactory. It just means that the group of circuits that have been tested, one of those has turned out to be unsatisfactory. So it's not that the building has suddenly deteriorated, it's just that the group of circuits that have been tested, one of those has come back unsatisfactory. And the other point just to note is that there's been significant improvement on the fire safety actions, with a number of those closed out, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I would now like to hand over to Mr. Mayhew to present the Compliance Quarterly Update.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. To go through the corporate property portfolio dashboard, water hygiene we'll start with. All properties continue to hold valid water hygiene risk assessments completed between 2019 and 22. These remain scheduled for renewal towards the end of this month, in line with the 25-26 municipal year plan and following completion of the fire safety remedials. In parallel, officers are updating the Council's water hygiene management procedures and codes of practice. Once this documentation has been finalised and approved, we will proceed to commission the next cycle of Legionella risk assessments across the portfolio. No other changes have been identified since the last reporting period. LOLA, lifting operations and lifting equipment regulations. All scheduled servicing and statutory inspections for operational lifts have been completed. Dashboard compliance remains 80%, which is attributable to 2 lifts at the Nightingale Centre currently being out of use. There are no changes to the report since the previous reporting period. Fire Risk Assessment Action, FRAs. A total of 116 fire risk assessment actions were identified across the portfolio, which comprised of 31 high priority, 84 medium priority and 1 low priority. As of the last update, 43 actions have been closed, made up of 20 high, 22 medium and 1 low. There were 28 actions in progress and a further 17 were pending. Within the current reporting period, there has been substantial progress since the previous report, with an additional 40 actions now being closed. This brings the total number of completed actions to 83, which is broken down as follows: 28 high priority, 54 medium and 1 low. A total of 23 actions remain in progress, consisting of 3 high priority and 20 medium. There are 10 actions still to be started, which are all of a medium priority. Overall, significant progress has been made in addressing the outstanding FRA actions. 83 actions have now been completed, compared with 43 at the previous reporting period. Work continues on the remaining 23 in-progress actions, while 10 medium priority actions are yet to commence due to operational and access constraints. Coordination with stakeholders, including tenants in multi-occupied buildings, continues to ensure that remaining actions can be delivered in a timely and effective manner. Asbestos. Asbestos management compliance remains at 100% as previously reported. However, since the last reporting period, 14 sites have now had their asbestos re-inspection surveys completed. No remedial actions were identified at any location, and all recommendations relate solely to ongoing monitoring. Where asbestos-containing materials, ACMs, are identified or presumed, a material score is calculated in accordance with HSG 264. HSG is the Health and Safety Guidance, 264 being asbestos, the survey guide. This sets out how asbestos surveys must be planned, conducted, reported and used to manage asbestos safely in non-domestic properties. The score combines the 4 sample variables to provide a total between 2 and 12, which determines the potential for asbestos fibre release should the material become disturbed. The resulting score is then categorised as very low, low, medium or high. Across the 14 surveyed sites, the assessed risk profile is as follows: very low, 54, low, 11, 2 medium and no high. To reassure members, the 2 medium risk items relate solely to insulation residue within a plant room, a non-public area. These areas are clearly marked with asbestos warning stickers, and any work conducted in this location is fully managed through the Council's contractor management process. EICR, Electrical Inspection Condition Report. Of the 18 directly managed sites requiring an EICR, 16 held satisfactory certification in the previous reporting period, with 2 sites remaining unsatisfactory. Site A is a building that's not currently in use, so will be brought up to compliance when that building is brought back into use. Site B had 6 C2s, 4 C3s and a further investigation. A full survey was completed with quotes received. Updates this period. During the current period, the remedial works required at Site B were completed, bringing the site up to a satisfactory standard and increasing the total number of satisfactory sites to 17 out of 18. However, as Mr Anderson mentioned, a further site was subsequently reached its scheduled inspection date. Following testing, the site was found to be unsatisfactory with 4 C2s and 2 C3s. A quotation has been requested from the contractor to undertake the necessary remedial works, and an order has now been placed. Once these works are completed, the number of satisfactory sites is expected to return to 17 out of 18, with completion anticipated before the end of this month. Site C, which had 24 C3s, although satisfactory, we've undertaken to complete the C3 actions. A quote had previously been received and an order placed. 2 attempts have been made to schedule these works in. However, due to operational requirements within the building, this has made implementation challenging. Revised quotations for undertaking the works on a Sunday have been had, and an order has now been placed, and we are currently working with all stakeholders to identify a mutually acceptable date that will minimise occupational impact. Based on availability received so far, we aim to have these works completed before the next meeting of this committee. LGSR, Landlord's Gas Safety Responsibilities. The outstanding remedial works identified in the previous reporting period at 1 site have now been completed. In addition, a further 6 sites reached their inspection dates and were tested, all receiving satisfactory certification with no remedial actions required. 2 sites remain capped. Following these latest inspections, overall gas compliance for all directly managed properties now stands at 100%. Chair, that includes the compliance update, so I've got nothing further to add, but I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr Mayhew or Mr Anderson? Councillor Poppy.
one very quick question, which you've probably answered before, Paul, and I just can't remember the answer. Because we do all the asbestos thing. Have we got any buildings that have got this concrete problem that the schools and stuff like that had, or?
Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Poppy. I can confirm that none of our buildings contain, or none of the corporate estates contain RAC.
Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. Not a member of your committee, so thank you for letting me speak. You mentioned the officer mentioned 1/3 of systems are tested in each process. I know the EICR for private residential is every 5 years. How often are these certificates issued or reviewed?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. The short answer to that, it varies dependent on the building and the use of the building. So it can be anything. Most commonly, it's 3 or 5 years. Certain areas, such as plant rooms, might be annually, dependent on what that plant room is and what it is used for. But largely, they are 3 years or 5 years, dependent on the use of the building.
So just following up on that, so if there's a failure in part of the system, if it's only been tested every third of it every 5 years, it could be 10, 12 years before a problem is spotted or identified.
Mr. Anderson.
Potentially, yes. Sometimes, or largely, the reason for doing every, or 30% or a third of the circuits in a building such as, say, the Brentwood Centre, that will have hundreds of circuits in it. So to test all of those every time would be quite an undertaking. So, yeah, there is that risk. Largely, though, if there is anything that would be building critical or as a health and safety nature, then the engineers would report that to us when they're on site. But, yeah, the standard is that we do a third every time it's required.
Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Chair. Always good to be at your committee. Sad it's the last one this year. Can I ask a question, please, about the Copfold Road car park? Is that okay? It's not, I don't have to, I can ask it here, not financial resources. It's about the graffiti on level 1. Thank you very much for responding to the first report of the initial graffiti that was there. There's obviously been a response to the second lot, which is a quite considerable amount of graffiti the other end. And my question is, how is it possible that someone is able to do that on part of our building, our property portfolio, where presumably we have CCTV around the building? It took a lot of time for them to do that on level 1. And I just wonder how they are able to do that with an on-site presence and cameras, please.
Mr. Anderson, to answer that, I'm guessing some elements of this may not be able to be an open session, but we will make as much as you can, and then you can follow up Councillor Barber anything that's beyond that. That's okay with you, Councillor Barber?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Barber. So what I would say is Copfold Road is not manned 24/7. So the facility that we have within the building, without going into too much detail, is only manned during office hours. So there is that question of when the incidents occur. I would rather come back to you once I've spoken to the control room around the other matters.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? If not, I will move the... Councillor Aspinall.
Thorough presentation. As a former chairman of Health and Safety Committee, we've moved years in advance of what we're actually doing and how we're doing it. I thank you both for that presentation.
Thank you, Councillor Aspinall. If there are no further questions or comments, I will move the recommendation set out on page 10 of the supplementary agenda. Do I have a second?
Happy to second.
Thank you very much. We will now vote on the recommendation on page 10 of the supplementary agenda. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayhew and Mr. Anderson. The motion is carried. Item 7 is the 2025-26 Q3 performance. The report begins on page 75 of the agenda. Mrs. Barnes, do you have anything to add?
Nothing further to add, Chair, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I will now move the recommendation set out on page 75 of the agenda. Do I have a seconder?
Happy to second.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments on this item? No, fantastic. In that case, we will now. Would you like to? No, we will now vote on the recommendations on page 75 of the agenda. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, members. Item 8 is the Brentwood Centre Progress Report. I will highlight that part of the report, which is page 17 of the supplementary agenda. Please can I remind members that appendices D and E are exempt from the public domain. Therefore, if you have any questions on these items, please ask them. Ask for a private session. We'll move to that. But please, members, be aware the way the system's working right now. If we move to private session, we will not be able to come out for purposes of the camera. So just consider that, because I think we have another item that ideally we'd like in open session as well, if that's possible. Mrs. Barnes, do you have anything to add?
Nothing to add, but happy to take any questions on the report, Chair.
Thank you. I will now move the recommendation set out on page 18 of the supplementary agenda. Do I have a seconder?
Happy to second it.
Thank you. Would anyone like to speak or have any questions on this item? No? Fantastic. Would the secretary like to say anything? No. We will now vote on the recommendations on page 18 of the supplementary agenda. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, members. Item 9 is the Asset Management Strategy Action Plan Update. The report begins on page 87 of the agenda. And again, members, Appendix B is exempt. Therefore, please refrain from asking any questions item while we're in open session. Ask to move to private session if you'd like to ask any items. Mr. Beer, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. This is the update report of the Asset Management Strategy, which was approved in June 2025. There was a priority action plan associated with the strategy, and that comes back regularly to this committee. Appendix A outlines those actions and the progress that's been made. The action plan was over an 18-month period, split into 3 blocks of 6 months, and members will note the progress has been made on all of the priority actions, in addition to all the other projects that the team have had to deliver. So it's been quite a busy period for the team, and happy to answer any questions as usual. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beer. I will now move the recommendations set out on page 87 and 88 of the agenda. Do I have a seconder?
Happy to second, thank you.
Do any members have any questions or comments on this item? No, fantastic. Seconder, would you like to add anything? No. We will now vote on the recommendations on page 87 and 88 of the agenda. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Before we move on to item 10, given this is the exclusion of the press and the public, I would like to put on the record my thanks to several people for this last 2 years of working on this committee. I have enjoyed being the chair considerably, and I'd like to thank every person who's been a member of it, and those like Councillor Barber who have felt like a member, even though he technically wasn't. In turn, a special note of thanks to my fellow members of the Strategic Asset Management Working Group, Councillor Poppy and Councillor Cloak, and Councillor Cloak in term as the Vice Chair. I couldn't have asked for anything more, so thank you very much for that. Your support has been appreciated throughout this, and I think we've got a lot done as a committee in general and as a team, so thank you to all of you. And also, very on camera, my thanks to an absolutely outstanding team of officers, Mrs. Barnes, Mr. Beer, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Mayhew, and several others from the asset side who've been absolutely fantastic, and then at the same time, Mr. Quilter and the planning policy team who've been brilliant, and Mr. Braces, also here. They've been an absolute delight to work with, the highest quality. We have put them under pressure and strain and been pained on several occasions, and they've always risen to the challenge. And I believe the projects that we are slowly developing and delivering are a testament to their work and their efforts and their commitment to the borough of Brentwood. And in turn, a special thanks to our clerk, Miss Wyatt, who I think believe was her first committee, and I think she may be regretting her life choices, but she has been an absolute delight to work with, and we've enjoyed working with her significantly. So thank you to everyone, and I hope you've enjoyed the last 2 years as much as I have, those of you who've been here, so thank you. Item 10 is exclusion of the press and public. Thank you, Chair. I just presume that, it's fine. Item 10 is exclusion of the press. But I should also say, Mr. Brace, I have actually enjoyed having you part of this committee rather than just give you a negative comment, which is somewhat harsh. is it agreed that we go into private session to discuss items 11 and 12?